I'm Babla Jonathan, and this is the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinox Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. In our top stories in this edition of the news, separatists are enforcing a lockdown across cities, towns, and villages in Cameroon's crisis-hit two English-speaking regions, the Northwest and the Southwest, to ensure schools remain shut for a fourth consecutive academic year. And administrative and municipal authorities are intensifying the fight against Operation Ghost Town. And out of Cameroon, xenophobic attacks in South Africa's commercial hub Johannesburg have sparked counter-protests in other parts of the African continent. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of the news on Equinox Television. We begin right away in the town of Kumba, Meme Division in the crisis-hit southwest region of the Republic of Cameroon, where administrative and municipal authorities are intensifying the fight against Operation Ghost Town and, of course, the lockdown imposed by separatists in the two English-speaking regions of the Republic of Cameroon. The administrative and municipal authorities have expressed their determination to kick the ghosts out of the town of Kumba and ensure that activities resume and, of course, return to normalcy. And the government delegate to the Kumba City Council has been sealing shops of persons who respect Operation Ghost Town imposed by the separatists. We have details in this report by Fomi Armstrong Sander.
Activities have remained paralyzed in Kumba since the start of the week, with locals blaming it on the lockdown imposed by separatists. And administrative and municipal officials have launched a war against closed shops and other business premises. The exercise began on Tuesday with the government delegates to the Kumba City Council sealing shops of traders who failed to open their shops at the Kumba main market.
Yeah, it's a decision that I just took, because I think it is too much now that our local economy that depends on the market is really down.
The government delegate thinks that the move is for the good of the city of Kumba and its inhabitants.
We were bound to take these measures to ensure that life comes back to the market of Kumba, so that we could also generate our income from this market again. So they should know that it doesn't move us closing our markets and then staying at home. It doesn't generate us any income.
Victor Nkelengo, who continued his campaign through Wednesday, was joined on Thursday by the senior divisional officer for the Meme, Ntundong Chamberlain.
Me, like the father of the division, let me continue to highlight that they are supposed to open their shops in order to sell. If not, they are going to move forward.
Disturbed by the situation, the president of the Kumba Main Market Traders Association, Mr. Samuel Njamilike, called on traders to be calm.
I'm not happy when I'm seeing traders being sent at home. Goods are being destroyed. Some of their vehicles are being burnt.
The government delegate, Victor Nkelengo, says each shop sealed would only be open upon payment of a fine of 25,000 francs CFE.
In the southwest regional chief town, Boya, the mayor of the municipality, Ekema Patrick Esunge, has been to war against Operation Ghost Town. He has been fighting the lockdown by separatists in his municipality for quite some time now, but the ghost has continued resisting, running from one part of the town to the other, and of course paralyzing activities in the town of Boya, and he has also been on the ground. The mayor, Kema Patrick Esunge, fighting and struggling to see that academic activities resume in full gear in all institutions in the town of Boya, but it is not the case. He has been on the ground with the governor, Benau Kalia Bilai, to ensure or galvanize teachers, students, and of course parents and all other persons to ensure an effective back to school in the town of Boya. Derek Chato reports.
Days into the first week of the 2019-2020 academic year, the Cameroon Defense Forces has come up with flyers on patriotism, assuring students and pupils of their security and the need for them to trust the military and go back to school. Mayor EQUINOXE, the mayor of the Buea Council, on his part, says as the father of the municipality, the take-off pace of school resumption in Buea has not been to his taste. But fortunately, he has identified what is slowing down effective school resumption in Buea subdivision.
It becomes difficult to take our children and send them to school where they cannot even have a taxi that will take them to school. You don't expect a child who leaves Buea town to the same Moriko to trek. That child definitely will go by taxi.
And he will be using what he called an antidote.
While they preach lockdown in the forest, we living in our homes and in the city, we preach open up. And that is what we have been doing for close to 3 years now. We decided to intensify it because without these business places being open, the people and students we are campaigning to go back to school will not feel the effervescence.
He started by descending downtown Buea Wednesday, accompanied by the Southwest Governor, Mr. Bernardo Kaliabilai, to fan up the town. Business owners whose shops were sealed last Monday for respecting Ghost Town and who came around this Wednesday had their shops unsealed, and those who were still absent had their shops sealed and marked. Mayor EQUINOXE, through the press, left them a message. The mayor's action practically brought Buea to life this Wednesday, September 4, 2019. It is now hoped that in the days ahead, school uniforms will be spotted on the street of Buea, something observers say has not been seen since Monday, September 2nd.
And the separatists have continued struggling to enforce the lockdown in the two Anglophone regions of the Republic of Cameroon as the socio-political and security crisis deepens further. And now we're going to talk about the announced strike action of lawyers, notably those of the Cameroon Bar Association, and government has been doing everything possible to quell down the anger of the lawyers who are protesting against the violation of human rights in Cameroon, notably the rights of detainees. Yesterday, there was a crisis meeting at the Ministry of Justice, which is part of government's efforts to attend to the problems highlighted by the lawyers of the Cameroon Bar Association. Hemin Iluga reports.
In a release signed by the Bar Council President Chakunte Patir and 12 others, the lawyers said they have consistently been denied access to their clients and persons in the various detention centers. They as well cited several rights violations by judicial authorities, as trial in a language not understood by the accused, extraction of confessional statements from accused persons through the use of torture and inducement. Added to this, they have declared that their action is induced by the illegal and prolonged detention of accused persons, among several other issues, which bore down to a scheduled strike they announced from September 16th to 20th, 2019.
This working session followed the resolution of the Bar Council in its session of Saturday, the 31st of August 2019, by which the Bar Council 1 decided that all lawyers should observe a 5-day nationwide sit-in strike from 16th to the 20th of September 2019. Decided that after this period, any further steps shall be taken if necessary. 3, called on all the representatives of the President of the Cameroon Bar Council to ensure the strict compliance of lawyers with this resolution in their respective jurisdictions.
In a meeting between the Ministry of Justice and members of the Bar Council, the government has urged the latter to reconsider its decision and promised to amend the situation and working conditions of the lawyers in the exercise. The lawyers were assured by Minister Delegate Jean de Dieu Momo.
Notre rôle était d'écouter les préoccupations de nos collaborateurs qui sont des auxiliaires de la justice, et la justice se doit d'être à l'écoute de ces auxiliaires. Nous sommes là pour écouter et apaiser tout le monde. Donc nous les avons écoutés, nous avons accepté, n'est-ce pas, de collaborer plus franchement que par le passé.
While making frantic efforts to dissuade members of the Cameroon Bar Association from holding a nationwide strike action, administrative talks targets appeasing the lawyers.
Emin Iluga reporting there. And tomorrow, 91 militants, leaders, and sympathizers, and of course allies of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement CRM political party of Professor Maurice Kamto will be appearing before judges of the Yaoundé Military Court tomorrow to answer charges relating to the protest move organized in some major towns of the country, and of course their charges of hostility against the fatherland, violence, and others. And of course the lawyers of Professor Maurice Kamto, the allies of the CRM political party, the other leaders and militants of that political party, notably Dupont-Moretti and other international lawyers, have continued to decry the violation of the rights of their clients, insisting that the military court is not competent to judge their clients with regards to international legal instruments signed and ratified by Cameroon. Now we're going to take you to Bangante in the west region of the country, where the lifeless body of a man in his 60s has been discovered in a septic tank. Immaculate Fokwe has more.
Kanji Rene, a carpenter by profession in his 60s, living in Bagante, west region of Cameroon, was discovered dead. According to witness accounts, he was drunk, and while returning home, he stopped to ease himself in a septic tank. While there, he lost stability, causing him to fall inside.
Donc, subitement, mon petit qui est à côté de...
One of the boys in the hostel called me to say that Rene had been discovered dead in a septic tank. So I rushed to the site. Look at the state of the septic tank. It is very deplorable. Even someone who is not drunk can still be a victim of such an incident. The absence of a firefighting unit in Bafang resulted to a 2-hour wait before the rescue soldiers were deployed from Bafoussam to the accident scene. Locals say there are many other septic tanks like this in the region, with many other persons dying due to similar situations.
Now we go out of the country to talk about the consequences of the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. Attacks on foreign-owned shops in South Africa's commercial hub, Johannesburg, have sparked counter-protests in other parts of the African continent, and demonstrators in the Democratic Republic of Congo's second city, Lubumbashi, earlier today broke the windows of South Africa's consulate, and there was also a small demonstration outside the South African embassy in the capital, Kinshasa. South Africa has temporarily closed its diplomatic missions in Nigeria following reprisal attacks by Nigerians triggered by the xenophobic violence in Johannesburg. Nigeria's government has been outspoken on its condemnation of the violence. The South African police says the unrest has subsided and more than 420 arrests have been made. The Foreign Minister of South Africa, Naledi Pandor, called the violence, that is the xenophobic attacks, an embarrassment on the country. And it should be noted that Tanzania's national air carrier says it is suspending flights from the commercial capital Dar es Salaam to Johannesburg. That's it for the first part of this newscast. Talking Point is up next. Thanks for staying with us in Talking Point. We are receiving a politician and an educationist, founder of the St. Louis University Institute. Dr. NGWANYAM, you're welcome.
Thank you.
What do you think about the efforts of administrative and municipal authorities in the southwest region of the country, notably within the framework of the fight against the Operation Ghost Town and, of course, the lockdown imposed by the separatists?
Well, I think they are doing the best that they can do within their past and within their own understanding. Well, they have been doing that for the past 3 years, and probably they should use some other techniques other than force.
Sealing shops and so on.
Sealing shops and doing that and doing, you know, like we call it the bafia dance, but the question is there a better way of doing it? That's the question, and probably they should look in their crystal ball again and look at the signs and symptoms and make a better diagnosis and give a better treatment.
All right. National dialogue is announced to come up in the days ahead, after a meeting between Prime Minister Chief Dr. Joseph John Gutte and some conveners of the Anglophone General Conference. The spokesperson of the AGC, Ellie Smith, confirmed that to us, and he told us that there's going to be a national dialogue that will be organized in the days ahead.
Oh, that's nice. That's good news. I wish I were part of it. I would have known the details and I would have known which parts of it to question. But that said, you know, last time we talked about this national dialogue, and it's a big thing, and we need to break it up into smaller dialogues so that we understand. Because if we just take it, wholesale as national dialogue, then we will end up a confused bunch like the Fumban Conference.
Already, is it a sign of hope? Is it a sign of better things to come, a return to normalcy in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon?
Well, at least talking about the national dialogue already is something that we should welcome. But we need to define what we mean by national dialogue. But just talking about that dialogue already is something, because for the past 3 years we've been saying dialogue, and we've all been spinning around in circles. And you know, the Prime Minister went out a couple of months, just shortly after his appointment as PM, to say, look, there will be this dialogue, and everybody was so happy, looking forward to a breakthrough to this Anglophone stalemate. And at the same time, another minister went on a national on a foreign TV to say it's not really it, and it looks like his word stood the test of time. And so we have the Prime Minister saying one thing, we have his ministers saying one thing. We don't know who is the boss, and so we are confused.
And after the Prime Minister said in Bamenda that government, the President of the Republic, is now ready to discuss everything except cessation, it took quite a long period of time before we are getting this information of the national dialogue that will be coming up. There was a period of dead silence, so to speak.
Well, we need to go back to the Prime Minister to ask him exactly what he means by national dialogue, because again, as I said, this country needs a set of dialogues to be able to solve the multiple problems we have. And if you bring all the problems to this one national dialogue, we will end up more confused than when you started. So we need to define a lot of things. We will say this problem will be solved by this dialogue, this other problem by this dialogue. Then at the end of the day, we put everything together and we can talk of a national dialogue where we come and reconcile with each other. You know, if you have observed women who are cooking some very delicate dishes, sometimes they boil the fish, then they grind the spices over there. They do that, they do them separately and bring them together. That's what we need to do. You cannot just put everything in the pot as a national dialogue will not work.
No, to understand clearly what you're saying, how should this national dialogue be organized? Should it be a kind of a mass where all the problems of Cameroon, including the Anglophone crisis, are brought to the table? The Anglophone crisis, the security challenges in the far north, in the Adamawa, in the east, problems affecting all the parts of the country, and should it be some sort of...
There's a scientific way of solving problems, and if you want to solve a problem, you define the problem. And when there's a problem, when the problem is too big, you take it down in chunks, and you deal with the different chunks, you know, because this particular chunk, you know, if you are eating some meat, you know, there's the bony meat, there's the flesh, you need different tools to attack the flesh, you need different tools to deal with the bones, and you need different tools to deal with the marrow. But you cannot just put everything together and use a fork and try to deal with all of that. It will not work. So this is it. In fact, you know, earlier on we had defined, I had tried to give you an understanding of 5 dialogues. Even as I sat down, I was thinking, and I increased it to about eight dialogues or so. But let me be very brief. You know, if we if we look at the country called Cameroon today and find out what is it that is tearing the country, what is the most important problem in the country, the most important problem in the country now is the Anglophone problem. And therefore, if we need any one dialogue, is that one dialogue to solve the Anglophone problem. That is the dialogue that will solve most of the problems. And for 3 years running, everybody has been saying, let us have this dialogue to solve these problems, because as we see, people are dying. So we need to deal with that. We need to deal with that little problem.
So should it be a dialogue between Francophones and Anglophones and government? How should it be structured? Let me just to come to the table as far as this particular dialogue is concerned?
Yes, let's run through very quickly, okay? So that when people, we can be going to the details, but I want people to have a different idea of the different dialogues. The first thing is that we have an Anglophone problem in the country, and let me say this and say it very clearly. Anglophones have no problems with Francophones. It should be very clear. Anglophones, the Anglophone called Anglophone lambda, or the Anglophone on the street, has no problem with the Francophone, the man on the street. If somebody is trying to mix these two, he's trying to bring us the South African kind of thing where we start killing each other while they sit and drink beer. That problem does not exist. It's a faux problem. Anglophones have a problem with the government. So Anglophones don't have Francophones, what am I saying? Anglophones don't have a problem with Francophones. Anglophones have a problem with the government. I'm sure that's very clear. Let's make that statement. Now, so Anglophones have a dialogue with government. That's the biggest dialogue in the nation. And when you hear about the AGC of His Eminent Christian Cardinal Tumi and the others put together, it's a dialogue, it's a preparatory meeting where Anglophones talk within themselves and then go to the dialogue table with the government, knowing where they stand with each other. And during this dialogue between Anglophones and Francophones, it will be an open dialogue, roundtable conference, where we talk to each other with respect. And the government is bound to listen to Anglophones and the Anglophones have got to tell them where the shoe pinches, and we have to solve this problem once and for all. It's very, very important that we deal in truth, love, and respect. Now, and so the AGC is that meeting where His Eminent Christian Cardinal Tumi and the others are saying, look, government, can you give us the opportunity for us to sit in our little corner as Anglophones and say our things and talk to ourselves without you sending your gendarmes to beat us, to kick us around and so on? Please, can you just do that for us? And the government has been spinning around in circles. But we just need to just talk to ourselves so that we can understand ourselves. And Anglophones, it doesn't matter what thinking they have, would be invited, that is if we are doing things properly, to this dialogue between Anglophones and the government to solve the Anglophone problem once and for all. And that's the first big dialogue.
The most pressing one at the
moment. The most pressing one. That's the dialogue that will solve 80% of the problems of the country. So what are the other small dialogues that we need to be dealing with? So we have the government needs to have a dialogue with the Bamileke case. It's very important. You can try to think about it the way you want, but that's another problem that is brewing, and it's teach in time saves 9. Government needs to be talking with Bamileke case. It's very important, and a meaningful talk. Government needs to be talking with the Northerners. There's an old problem that has never really been thrashed, and it keeps brewing, and it has prepared a fertile ground for Boko Haram. So we need to have an open talk. Government needs to have an open talk with the people of the North, so that we begin to create an entente, a milieu where peace can thrive. Peace cannot thrive where there's anger. Then the government needs to, the government needs to be talking to youths. Youths as a whole, be they Beti youths, Bamileke youths, Anglophone youths from the North, Sawa youths or whatever, there is a disconnect between an older generation of people who had it easy and all these youths who are in our universities or those that just left and so on, who are roaming the streets and have no sense of direction. When you see these xenophobic attacks in South Africa, anybody could tell you what they want to tell you, but the underlying problem is the economics, because those youths are cut away from the taps. I mean, how do I put it now? They are not finding their feet on the ground. Their livelihood is not there. It's threatened. I mean, they don't have it. And when you don't have it, you're going to be violent. Well, another contributing factor is the fact that they didn't go to school at the time they had to go to school. That's why it's important for all our children, Anglophones, especially to go to school. And even when we go to school, I've said it between you and we've discussed it several times, that our educational our education in this country needs to be beefed up. It needs to be changed so that it is actually productive and helps children to solve problems. So we have two problems: that children should go to school, and the second one, that the curricula and the input should be changed so that children develop capacities for solving problems and earning money, not working in offices. So these are, so you begin to understand the problems of the youth. And if you all go back, I know someone doesn't like me talking. If you go back to 2008, there was a crisis between the government and the youth, and it turned around this thing. And we need to correct it once and for all.
Now, before we continue to the other types of dialogue that should be organized in Cameroon, I want us to emphasize a little bit on the dialogue between the government and the people from the west region of the country, notably the Bamlikis, as you indicated, and the northerners. The Bamlikis, what is the problem that should be solved in that dialogue? Is it tribalism?
Yes, there is a divide and rule kind of thing that is going on, and then there's this tribalism, this tribalism that I don't like. When people start calling others Tongtina, Sardina, and all these kind of terminologies, and then they are saying, we will burn your shops, we will burn your banks, we will do all of this kind of thing. That is hate speech, and we need to be able to deal with these things.
It has to be killed.
Yeah, it has to be killed. Otherwise,
before
we are sowing it
and produce something
it's very, very dangerous. It's very dangerous, and some people who are in power might think that is to their benefit. But when the fire starts burning, everybody is going to pay the price, and it is not good. It is not good, and we need to stop it. It's very important.
The northerners, what's the problem?
The northerners, even some people, of course, these very people who created, some of these people, they call the people in the north, you know the name they call them, Mutong, all those kind of things. It's not good to tag your people with names. There are some people who just, I don't know whether they fell from the sky, but they just like calling Anglofu, Sardina, Tongtina, Mutong, all these kind of things. This is hate speech, and we need to deal with it. And we need to go to the north and look at them as a people and treat them with respect. If you have seen their schools, they have nothing to be proud of. They have been neglected, and they need to be treated like human beings. Water crisis, school crisis. We have in quotes classrooms in the northwest, southwest. Those some have been burnt, but even when what we call a classroom, well, could be some bricks or something like that. But you've seen it's up in the north is straw. There's nothing there. Makeshift structure. And then you have a lot of big people coming from there, making a lot of hot air, blowing a lot of hot air, and they cannot look after their people. We need to be able to deal with all these inequalities.
All right. In brief, before we go, the last dialogue that should be
organized. The last dialogue, Francophones need to be talking to Francophones so that we don't have this Sardina, Tongtina issues. Then the government and parents talking with youth, we have talked about it. And then we have now what we actually are calling a national dialogue. What we are actually calling a national dialogue should now be that like when a woman cooking her thing, she brings everything together and mixes the porridge. Everybody now comes on table, we greet each other, we drink a coffee, and in a lighter mood, we share friendship, love, and a Coca-Cola, and pat each other on the back, and in a camaraderie kind of thing. It is not, the national dialogue is not the place to go and sort out the problems, it's the place to go and make friendship.
Thanks, Dr. Nick NGWANYAM. You're a politician, educationist, founder of St. Louis University Institute. Thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure being here.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.